Hello, I'm Ellie, the host of The Healthy Practice. In this episode, I'm delighted to speak to Tina Wright, the IBS Therapist. Tina is an accredited cognitive behavioural psychotherapist, a mindfulness teacher and chronic pain specialist. Her services are dedicated to helping people manage and overcome their IBS symptoms. So why might this be relevant to you? Well, IBS and its symptoms are directly related to chronic stress. We know as healthcare professionals running your own practice, stress is an everyday occurrence. It's so important that we learn to manage stress and overcome perfectionism so that we can lead a peaceful and fulfilling life. So welcome to The Healthy Practice, Tina. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Ellie. Yeah, thanks for having me, first of all. It's lovely to be here. As you say, I'm Tina Wright and I am an accredited cognitive behavioural psychotherapist, accredited with the BABCP. I'm a mindfulness teacher and also chronic pain expert, but also I trained with SIRPA, which is the Stress Illness Recovery Association. That sort of gave me a lot more insight into the mind and the body rather than just the mind from the psychology side. But actually, if I just rewind a little bit, if that's okay, just to come back to, why do I do what I do? What is it I do? I came to psychology actually quite late in life. I was in my 30s before I started studying psychology. I did so because I'd suffered from postnatal depression and generalised anxiety disorder when I had my son, and I was just I became really quite obsessed rather than just fascinated. I became an obsession to understand everything I could about the mind and people's behaviour and why we become unwell. What is it that means that someone who had been outgoing and the life and soul of the party and like the one that would arrange all the nights out and things, why would they be the person that would get depression after having a baby? Why would that occur? Why would you get so anxious? And so it became this journey of discovery, which I continued through my work within the field afterwards. After I graduated from the University of East Anglia with first class honours, I worked in mind for a while just to test that I did want to work in the field. Found that I really enjoyed it, found it really rewarding, and went on to work in the NHS for 9 years and continued my training, until, I did a postgrad in CBT. But I did actually just become a little bit more, I want to say frustrated. It felt very containing in the NHS. I've got nothing against the NHS. I'm so grateful to them for the work that they do as an organisation and as individuals. But it became quite restrictive to me because I became more and more aware of the research around mind and body and how there was this interconnection. And I was experiencing some physical health issues. My gut issues had always been there, but they were exacerbated when I was studying. And then I got a diagnosis of fibromyalgia disorder as well, which I was really shocked about. But it meant that I really needed to understand not just the mind, but why, was there these things going on in my body as well. So I was reading up and studying the mind and the body and realised that all that I was learning would help so many other people with what we might call medically unexplained symptoms that were not being treated within the NHS, or the options for treatment were very limited and contained to either physical health in a general hospital or under a GP, and mental health within a mental health trust. And
so quite separate. Yeah.
And it was really frustrating because I was actually seeing lots of my patients at the time in the NHS that were coming with anxiety but also had gut issues, but I could treat them for the anxiety. But it was almost like we're ignoring your body while we're talking about your mind. And then likewise, I would go to a rheumatologist to see them about the fibromyalgia that I'd been diagnosed with, or the gastroenterologist for the gut issues. And they would not ask how I was feeling emotionally. They wouldn't necessarily, check in with how my stress levels were or what was happening in my life, socially or, in relationships or anything. They would just talk about the physical symptoms. So I set up in private practice to make sure that those people that need that joined up care between the mind and the body could actually get that. They were able to receive the whole range of treatments that were available rather than just one or the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So thank you so much for that introduction, Tina. It's something we're going to really dig into later on. But there's so much to get into on this topic, and I think we should probably start at the most basic end. What exactly is IBS?
So irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, is a collection of symptoms, predominantly habitual change in your bowel movements. So it's either diarrhea or constipation or a mix of both on a over a longer time, not just a few days. It's into weeks and months, and it's where we have discomfort, pain, bloating in the abdomen, and it can cause fatigue and lots of other symptoms that aren't necessarily part of the diagnosis, such as changing how we think about ourselves, how we think about our body, what we believe we can do and can't do. And so it has a knock-on effect on our relationships, and it has a knock-on effect on our eating habits. We'll very often believe that there's foods that will make us feel worse or better. And so we change what we eat, maybe where we eat as well. It reduces our social life because, choosing a restaurant that has foods that we can eat, it can be quite limiting. It reduces where we go. We might not want to travel. We might be scared of going on a train because we don't want to use the public toilet on a train, or there might be issues at work. Very often, I remember being in an office, an open plan office, and someone sort of keep looking up from their desk and watching you go past every hour because you're going to the toilet again. There's comments made, and you sort of think, it adds to the embarrassment. So there's more of those negative, as we call them, negative emotions, the embarrassment, the anxiety, the worry, the fear that other people are going to find out. And the biggest fear of all, of not making it in time to the toilet for a lot of people with IBS. So it's a lot more holistic diagnosis than just the biological, mechanical, aspects of the gut.
And is it painful? Can IBS be painful as well?
Yes, it definitely can. And, talking to my clients and remembering just how, I felt at times, it's almost like you don't know or you don't believe this is just, and I'm going to do the air quotes because, it's not just IBS, but that's how we start to think about it, because society as a whole sees it as a lesser diagnosis because it's one of an exclusion of other potential structural damage to the gut. If there's nothing there found from various tests, then we are given a diagnosis of IBS, and it's sort of downplayed, but actually it can be excruciating and it can be long lasting, and it's very very different for each person. Sometimes it's a sharp pain, sometimes it's a cramping pain, sometimes it's more of a backache. It can be in various different areas of the torso, if you like, but it's and in various forms. And it can be different for each person, and it can change day to day as well, which all adds to that frustration and worrying concern.
And I guess that all exacerbates the stress, which in turn can then exacerbate the IBS. So it's a cycle, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And the stress in itself, it's the cortisol release from the adrenal glands when we're in that fight, flight, stressed situation. And if that's continuous, which it is in most physical health issues that are long lasting, We're going to have more cortisol in our bloodstream at any one time than the average person. So it's going to send signals to the bowel to contract, and that's going to add to the pain. It is that cycle, and that's why very often CBT techniques can really help break that cycle, because it isn't one thing, and they are all feeding each other.
It's incredible hearing you say that about them feeding each other, that's not picked up on more in the NHS or in other areas, that they are treated so differently as completely different things, when it's quite obvious the way you explain it there, that it's all linked. And actually, if you treat the mental health condition, perhaps you're treating the IBS. And anyway, we'll get onto that later on. But how the medical industry understands IBS, it has actually evolved in recent years. So NICE released new guidelines in 2022 referring to the gut-brain axis. So can you explain what the gut-brain axis is and what this means in practice?
Yeah, sure, Ellie. The NICE guidelines did change in 2022, but previous to that, in 2018, the Rome Foundation actually changed their classification of IBS. So up until that point, it was seen as a gut issue. It was known as a functional gut disorder, saying that there was something functional, something that wasn't working right in the gut. And then in 2018, the research and the Rome Foundation, like an organisation, they're a not-for-profit organisation that collates and creates the research on gut issues, so across-the-board gut issues. They were starting to see that there is more research to say that was to do with the connection between the gut and the brain. And so they reclassified IBS as a gut-brain, or a disorder of the gut-brain interaction. So NICE just look at all the research and make decisions on the best way forward for the majority of the population. So looking at the research for IBS, they were seeing that it was more of a gut-brain issue rather than just a gut issue. And it was about the connection between the gut and the brain. And that's where this axis is, it's the connection between the gut and the brain. It means basically this highway that has many carriageways. We've got the vagal nerve, which is the longest cranial nerve, cranial nerve 10, which goes from the brainstem right through to the whole of the digestive region. So it sends messages from the brain to the gut. And then those brain chemicals can go back from the gut to the brain. And all those neurochemicals such as serotonin and dopamine are found in both areas. And so they are sending signals backwards and forwards constantly. And then we've got the blood supply as well, which is where the chemicals such as cortisol and adrenaline are being transferred between the two as well. And so if something affects the gut, it will affect the brain. If something affects the brain, it will affect the gut. So on a biological level, it's now being accepted that there is this connection, even though for years we've known it in, like seeing it in evidence day to day. So we've known it intuitively. We know that if we just look at a lemon, say, cut it open and smell it, we're not eating it, but our body reacts as if we're eating it. It will create saliva. And we'll have that sort of, we know that our gut can do a flip if we start to get anxious. So we are aware of it on this level, but we've not accepted it because our medical professions weren't accepting it. But now they are, because there is research, there is science, that's saying what you thought is true. It has now started filtering through. But I guess the thing is, with a lot of the bigger organisations like the NHS and culture and the way we see things in general in society, it takes a long time for a paradigm shift, to get those messages through, to help people to see that, it's now being accepted as a gut-brain issue. It's going to take years, and I think that's quite sad in a way, that there's lots of people in the meantime that are going to still be just looking at the gut, just looking at their diet and medications, because they're still believing it's a functional issue. And actually there is, more that you can be doing to relieve these symptoms.
It's funny how it will take such a long time, yet we've been saying things like listen to your gut or what's your gut instinct for so long, and it's true. You're like after I'll be out or I'll see something that makes me worried and I'm like, oh my god, you can feel it in your gut. And it's so weird that it will take a long time for that to trickle down into that understanding of the two talking to each other. Even though we all know instinctively, we say it's in our language, it's in the way we live our lives, that we listen to our gut, and our gut and the brain speak to each other. So it's incredible that it's taken that long, actually.
And I think it's worse in Western societies than it is in Eastern. Eastern have still had that connection. They've still understood that the mind and the body are one. They've had that, understanding, from their traditional meditations and practices, and continue to hold on to that in the vast majority of cases. However, in the West, we were very much influenced by Descartes and being his dualism, and saying that I think and therefore I am, and it's almost like the brain is predominant, and our society has been set up like that. If you think about going to school and our education system, we're very much looking at intellectual health rather than intuitional health. We very much look at, what are you, whether you can read and write, rather than how you feel and how you look after yourself.
Absolutely.
Yet, what's going to pay most dividend in the long run?
Well, exactly. Yeah, you're right. We don't learn about any of that kind of thing. And I think it's in Tibetan when the word for the heart and the word for the mind is the same word. I think it's Tibetan. That could be completely wrong. I'm so sorry. And that's quite interesting. I know it's not the gut, but it's a mind body. The word is the same. So it's almost like they don't differentiate the mind and body at all. It's not a concept. So yeah, in the East, they definitely do. They are more.
Yes. I mean, we could get really philosophical about it, because where does the mind live?
Yeah.
We assume, because of the way we've been socialized, that it's in the brain. But there's lots of connections in the brain, but there's still more connections in the gut. Is our mind actually in the gut?
Oh, maybe it is. Maybe it is. Oh, I've never thought about that before. Oh, we're going deep. I'm going to have to think about. I'll think about this afterwards. Yeah.
So I don't know the answers.
No, and nobody does. Yeah.
No.
But the good thing is, it's now being recognised as the gut-brain axis. So they're linked, and that's great. So it's being medically recognised finally. So how might this gut-brain axis influence how we treat and manage IBS?
So as I just alluded to, really, was that we've in conventional medicine in the West, we've been treating it as a functional disorder, so medications to relieve symptoms, and we've looked at diet again to relieve symptoms, but not looking at the cause or looking at a cure. And so this opens up so many other avenues. And I think you said earlier about you can treat the underlying anxiety, you're going to treat the gut. And a lot of the clients that I see actually do have a diagnosable anxiety disorder, or have had chronic stress, chronic meaning long term.
So who do your clients tend to be then? What kind of common stresses are they facing when they come to see you?
Very often it's professionals or entrepreneurs, care professionals, and people running a private practice, or people very often in jobs that are thinking jobs. So I work with a lot of engineers, people that work in IT, insurance and financier, like those that work in risk assessment and analysts, very often, it's because we've been stuck in our head. That's very often the type of people that also have IBS gut issues and anxiety. And I see links in there. I pause in because I don't like the term character traits, because I really don't believe that we're born a certain way. I'm a behavioralist. I believe that we've learnt how to be through our life, and there's been certain circumstances that have meant that certain behaviours have served us better to survive. So we weren't born warriors, but a lot of my clients are worriers. They've gone through periods of their life where there's been uncertainty and lots of maybe chaos or confusion. So they learn that actually worrying about it gives them a way of feeling like they're dealing with that uncertainty, although very often it doesn't result in any practical outcome. I said to a client yesterday who was worrying, and she has her own business, and I said, okay, let me just ask you, what's the ROI on worry?
Well, yeah. She's spending a lot of time doing it.
Yeah. You spend a lot of time, energy and effort on worry, and actually there is no return on it. So worriers are very often people with gut issues, and also you can look at perfectionism as a spin-off of worry. We often think we have to get it right, and we'll worry about getting it right, or else we think that we're a failure. That wasn't something you were born with either. It's something that you've learned throughout life, maybe from childhood or early life at least, that you need to be perfect to be accepted, otherwise you're a failure, or that there's a risk in some way. So there's this anxiety around perfectionism, and that obviously can be pervasive, in our job and our home life. We might want to continue doing things right and strive more to do those things right. So those clients that I work with are very often worriers and ambitious and wanting to get things right, not wanting to fail. They're really struggling to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And they have a fast mind that is analytical, and that feeds those traits, those behaviours that they're then exhibiting, which is going to create this other cycle, which is feeding the stress and feeding the IBS. Or, other gut issues, other physical health issues as well. I've worked with lots of different people with different chronic health issues, but many of them, have these gut issues because there is such a big response in our gut to stress.
And healthcare professionals, I know a lot of them, perfectionism is something that they can struggle with. So what's the best way that we can handle perfectionism?
Perfectionism essentially is having an excess of your expectations and trying to strive to meet them, and a fear of failing to meet those expectations. So essentially what we would like to do is to reduce our expectations, reduce what we want or feel we need to do for others and ourselves. So, I can speak from personal experience. I've been there. I can remember having a full diary so that, at the end of the day, I never felt like I'd got where I needed to go, because there's always something that comes up. Always, life happens constantly, and it will get in the way of your diary. It will stop you from achieving everything that you set out to do if you've got too much in there. Again, another client recently was, saying she wants to be able to get up and meditate and journal and do all these good things, and then she wants to work, and then she wants to finish working and have time to go to exercise and spend with her husband and cook a really healthy meal. is that realistic to do all that in a day? So recognizing the problem, recognizing that you're trying to do too much or expecting too much of yourself and others, and trying to reduce those expectations, but in a compassionate way, so that you can say, actually, is that realistic? Can I just pull it back a bit, And what I started doing was adding buffers of time in my day. I'd have a half an hour in the morning where it just said, it actually says
blank
in my diary, and I still have it. And actually, it says Smiler because that's my dog. And so it's a reminder to just go sit with him, play with him, take him out in the garden, play ball, just have a break from doing.
I love that. I'm going to
do that. So I've got Smiler gaps. Like 3 in the working day. I mean, depending on who you are and how your day goes. I had a boss at Mind who used to disappear on a Friday about 2:00 every week. And in his diary, it just said Mr. Smith. And we were like, we don't know who this Mr. Smith is. Where does he go? And there was all sorts of, discussions, and you can imagine the
theories
and hypothesizing about where it was he was going and who was Mr. Smith. So one day I had enough, and I was actually sat there. He was leaving. Actually, it was at his leaving do. We'd waited that long, and I sat talking to him and saying, "What are you going to do now?" I said, "Oh, you're going to have more time with Mr. Smith." He went, "Oh yeah, definitely." I said, "Who is Mr. Smith?" And he said, "It's me." I said, "That's not your name." He said, "No, it's just a way of me making an appointment to go out and do something for me for 1 hour a week without any interruptions. I love that. Mr. Smith."
I love that.
I was just like, it was just a great lesson to to know that even that he was a CEO of a Mind branch, and he gave himself permission. So I guess that's the thing. We need to give ourselves permission to not have to do constantly.
Yeah, and nobody's too busy to see Mr. Smith for an hour a week.
That's it. Make it as an appointment. You feel like compelled to do it as well. Research says that if you write something down, you're 42% more likely to do it. So write it as an appointment in your diary. That's why I have Smiler in my diary 3 times a day. And even if I don't have enough time, if I don't take that whole time to go have a cuddle or go play ball, I will still have a break and smile. He makes me smile because it's just reminded me that there's more to life than work, even though our jobs are very important.
So when that little appointment pops up on your screen, you're like, it triggers in your mind, it's just a sort of perspective
it's a
break,
cozy feeling.
It is. It's nice. So running a business and managing a chronic illness isn't easy. So what are some of the challenges that people face in this situation?
Yeah, so, I mean, especially with IBS, there's the fear of needing to take a break, go to the toilet, there's the fear of not having the energy for the day. With most chronic illnesses, fatigue is a huge symptom as well. It's going to have a potentially detrimental effect on what you can do and how much you can achieve in each day. But again, it's being very careful with yourself, compassionate, and making sure that you don't overstretch yourself. Other things that might come up are, those appointments and trying to fit those in, health appointments, which can be really, draining. I don't mind admitting I'm in menopause at the moment, and I've had a few, appointments recently to talk about HRT and, different aspects of it. And so I know that you're like looking at your diary and going, well, I've got these clients here. I can't not see them. I can't change that one because I had to change theirs before, and you're trying to justify why their appointment is more important than yours. But if you don't go to your appointments or don't make that time and allow yourself, again, giving yourself permission to do that, you're not going to have a business to run eventually.
No, you won't be able to show up. for your clients, will you? Yeah.
Or you'll be doing it and you'll be more stressed, so the symptoms will just escalate. It is hard though. It's hard to juggle, and it's almost like having another ball in the mix when you have a chronic illness, because it is something else just to continue, not necessarily in the forefront of your mind, but just have in consideration. So when you're booking your diary or you're considering, what you are wanting to do, just be kind to yourself. Would you expect, your child or your partner to do that, or your friend, if they were feeling unwell or had no sleep the night before, or were just feeling really under the weather, do you want to treat yourself in that way, and expect yourself to keep pushing forward? Or is it going to be more beneficial just to have that break and go to that appointment, or not do quite so much?
Yeah. And what strategies do you use or do you suggest to people to manage stress that they're feeling when they're running a business?
Yeah. So I know that we were going to talk about routines, and we're going to come on to a morning routine, but setting your day, setting the intention for the day, and having a really strong morning routine is beneficial, and it's easier to then continue that mindset throughout the day if you start your day with that. So making sure that you have time to look after your own needs first thing in the morning is key to, I think, for anybody, not just if you're running a private practice, not just if you've got any physical health issues. It's for everybody. If we could start the day slower, rather than jumping out of bed, checking our phone, hurrying up and stuffing some food down and getting the kids to school and racing here and there, just take a breath. I know it's not always possible, and there are so many pulls on our time, but if we can make sure that we have that space to nourish yourself with those basics, and making sure we have a healthy breakfast, hydrate. We lose so much water during the night, especially at this time of year in the UK at the moment. The weather's nice. We're gonna, we lose a lot of water. We need to make sure we're hydrated. Otherwise, the brain and the gut are going to suffer, and you will suffer, as an emotional and physical consequence of that. Having time just to meditate, and little and often, it's always better than one-off. There was a study done a number of years ago looking at monks and how actually whether short bursts of meditation compared to once a week long meditation of an hour or 2 hours was better. And they found that 10 minutes a day was so much better than an hour at the weekend.
Yeah.
You're better for our own physical or emotional health.
I practice mindfulness making a cup of tea. So you don't have to sit down for half an hour. Like I think it's really important that you can actually fit it in. Like I'll make a cup of tea and I'll do mindfulness at the same time, or other things, having a shower, whatever, washing the dishes. You can sort of fit it in, can't you?
Yeah. I mean, I at the moment with the weather nice, I'll make it. I prefer coffee, and I limit it to 2 caffeinated coffees a day, because we know that caffeine, in excess can be detrimental, but there is lots of research that a little bit of caffeine, and especially in coffee, is good for our gut. It's good for the microbiome. So actually I take my coffee outside, and I will sit outside and drink my coffee and take in, what's it's like, what's the weather like today? How can I feel, do I feel any moisture on my skin? Can I feel any heat in the sun today?
What can you smell?
That plant well, that plant has started sprouting. What's that? There's some nice colours there. Looking at the different shades of green, and I'm always fascinated. How many shades of green are there?
There's loads, isn't there? Yeah. It's massive.
And just having a bit of curiosity about how you feel and what's happening through your senses, drinking that coffee, tasting it, rather than just gulping it down on the way out the door. It's just starting the day with that little bit of mindfulness in whatever way works for you can be really helpful to then set you up for a more mindful day, a more present day, and a less stressful day. I mean, there's lots of other things that we can do to release stress, but, it does come down to starting somewhere.
I replaced scrolling through my phone. And as soon as I woke up, I used to do that for ages. And then I'd go take the dogs out. Instead, I don't even look at it now. I'm like, right, I'm going to get up and go straight out and not look at all that stuff. And even that, I didn't have to get up earlier to fit this in.
Yeah.
I just cut out something that just wasn't helpful for me or my mind or anything. And that was looking at the news. That wasn't helping. As soon as I woke up, looking at the news was just making me feel awful. So I just cut it out. And you can get up early, like 15 minutes earlier would be great. And then you can fit something else in. But also I bet there's things that you're doing that are perhaps not serving you at all. And you could think, why am I doing that? It's just pointless. Well, I could have a coffee in the garden or anything else.
Definitely. And you're right, Ellie. And I think that's the thing that I did was, to make the time to sit in the garden with my coffee. It was that I stopped checking my emails first thing in the morning. Yeah. Because I'd check my diary to see what I was doing that day and then check my emails. And
and 15 minutes goes like that.
Why am I doing this when I could be enjoying, 10 minutes, just drinking my coffee? And you end up doing those things later anyway, and you do them a number of times in the day usually. If you check your emails, you check them once, you'll check them 10 times.
The emails are not going anywhere.
Exactly.
They're always there.
But that moment is going somewhere, and you'll never get it again.
That's nice. And how does our nervous system come into all this? Where does that all sort of fit in?
Yeah, well, our nervous system is the thing that's regulating or experiencing the stress, isn't it? It's the system. Again, that cranial nerve, the vagal nerve, is central to our nervous system, and that is the highway between the gut and the brain. But if we can control that, or at least calm it, it's going to calm the rest of our body, but mainly our gut, and calm our thoughts. So, a deep breath, a few deep breaths is even better, but even just one really nice deep breath right down into the solar plexus. Yeah. It's going to activate that vagal nerve at the lower point where it's going into the gut, and it's going to say, all is well. It sends the message back up to the brain to say, all is well. And we can relax even for that moment.
That's beautiful. That's so simple.
It's so simple, yet we don't make the use of what we've got, which is, our breath and our body.
One deep breath. What do you mean by chronic pain is not just physical?
I think, I alluded to it a little while ago when I said about the different aspects of IBS. We'll get a medical diagnosis that includes very often just the physical aspects. And if you get I'm just going to go off on a slight tangent. If you have a mental health diagnosis, it's usually behavioural. And it's actually, we have so many facets to our being. We aren't just a mind that thinks, and we're not just a body that keeps us alive and surviving. We have a social life that we're involved in, and relationships, and our thoughts are there constantly. We can't get rid of thoughts. They're always going to be there. So to expect that chronic pain, that something going on in our body is isolated and just an individual commodity, it's actually got so many facets to it. The physical is just the one that we're focusing on at that moment, but there'll be thoughts about it. There'll be thoughts about, I can't do this because I'm in pain, or, oh, I hope it goes, or I'm always going to be in pain, which will have an impact on our mood and our emotion. It will impact our relationships with other people and our social life and how we are in the world, what we decide to do or not to do. No physical, not just pain, but no physical symptom or experience is purely a physical experience. And if we treat it like that, we're going to ignore so much else that we can do to help if we need help, or every other aspect if we, just all those opportunities to grow, all those opportunities to survive, not just survive, but to start thriving. We're not going to have them if we are concentrating just on one area. So, chronic pain is not just physical pain. Chronic pain is an holistic phenomenon that needs to be treated as such and looked at and revered in a lot of ways, because it's necessarily that something's gone wrong with the body. It's not a structural problem. It's very often a message that we can listen to, a message that says, I'm not happy in some way, or something needs to change. A message that's saying, what you're doing right now isn't helping me. So if we start to listen to whatever the chronic pain or symptom is in the body, what are we doing at the time that's causing it? What is triggering it? It's not necessarily a physical thing. It could be that we're in a job that we don't like. We're in a situation that really isn't suiting us. We're in a relationship that isn't helpful for us. And it's causing that extra stress, which is then showing up in the body. But it's that message that it's another way of relating to the body, to listen or allow it to guide us, I guess.
Before we summarise today's topic, I just wanted to let you know that the Healthy Practice podcast is brought to you by WriteUp, the software that streamlines your practice, saves time and connects you with your patients. WriteUp helps over 13,000 clinicians and has facilitated over 4 million appointments. You can start your free trial today and check out all of the amazing features like video consultations, cashless payments, diary management, and having one place to store all of your patient records. Just go to writeup.com, that's WRITEUPP.com. Okay, Tina, this has been really, really interesting. And I just want to summarise a few bits for our listeners. So can you summarise for us the gut-brain axis and why it's really important to treating IBS?
There's a highway between the brain and the gut, and it sends the signals backwards and forwards between the two, which means that whatever happens in the gut is not necessarily just a gut issue. Whatever happens in the brain is not necessarily just a brain issue. We need to be looking at both ends of that highway to be able to understand and treat anything that isn't working to our advantage.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And your top tips on how to get over perfectionism?
Be compassionate and try and release your expectations. Mm-hmm. Ask yourself if it's realistic to expect yourself or anybody else to do what you're asking.
Mm-hmm. And if you can you just give us a really quick overview on some daily mindfulness habits and routines that people can put into place, probably tomorrow, start putting them into place in private practice if they're running their own private practice?
Yeah. So mindfulness is really just paying attention to the present moment. So using your senses is a great way to bring yourself to the present moment, because your senses are never in the past or in the future. They're only just here now. So it can be, something as simple as having a cuddle with your pet, but feeling how their fur feels, how, how they smell, what's going on in their eyes, looking at them, taking real note. It can be drinking your favourite drink, sitting outside or inside, it doesn't matter, but holding the cup, feeling the smoothness of the ceramic. How does it feel on your lip? Is that different? Is the heat coming from it? So we can be mindful at any moment. And nature is a brilliant way of getting in touch with that present moment, because it's constantly changing. So there's always something to be curious about. So getting out in nature is definitely a big part for me of my mindful practice.
Yeah. And you know who's a mindfulness experts in my house? And my dogs. There they are.
Definitely.
They are so good at mindfulness.
Exactly. I say all the time, be more dog.
Yeah.
Be more dog. Because they are either happy or they're not. They love to just feel the sun on their skin and the grass on their back. Mine rolls on, and it's just such pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, they're not bothered about what's going to happen later or whether they'll get fed. They just eat when they're hungry, sleep when they're tired, and do what they want in the moment.
In the moment. They're not thinking about yesterday. Oh, what did I do yesterday that was stupid? They're not thinking about tomorrow. They're just thinking about now. And it's so good to watch them and reminds you how to be mindful.
And the other thing that they do really well is if they do get stressed, if they chase that cat and don't get it, mine's taken to chasing the pigeons off of the fence that keep landing.
One of mine does
get them.
Yeah.
And he darts out and then he'll have a little shake. And that's a really great way of resetting our whole physicality and our vagus nerve, is to have a shake it out.
Yeah, shake it off. They do that.
They do. If mine sees another dog that's looking at him in a funny way, he'll growl, and then a minute later he's shaking and his tail's wagging again. Forget it. Don't hang on to grudges. They don't.
I love that. Before I let you go today, if you were in the audience right now, what would be the one challenge that you set yourself this week to check in with your nervous system and your stress levels?
I would remind myself to just take a breath every so often. So I would probably choose a habit I'm doing daily, a number of times a day. So perhaps eating a meal is a good one, because it's, usually 3+ times a day people do have a meal. And beforehand, take a breath and think about what you're eating rather than just diving in. Just have that moment of downtime 3 or 4 times a day. And it will just reset and allow us to face the next moment in the day.
That's really good. Thank you so much, Tina. Where can our listeners follow more of your work?
Okay, so there's 2 main sites or places that you can find me. Either my website, which is evolve-psychotherapy.co.uk, or my Insta, which I'm on every day, and that is at Evolve with Tina.
I'm going to find you after the episode. Thank you so much, Tina. It's been an absolute joy speaking to you today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Ellie. And if anybody's got any questions, feel free just to reach out. I'll answer any DMs.
Great. We'll put all your information in the show notes. Thank you again, Tina. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
And that's the end of today's episode. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to Tina. She did an amazing job of outlining how to deal with perfectionism and stress. I really hope you take something away from it. Remember to check out writeup.com for all of your practice's software solutions and to start your free 30-day trial. No payment details are required. Thanks for listening to the Healthy Practice podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review. It really does help more than you might think. I'll see you next time.